Here's a little demo of how I set up my Midi Fighter Twister. So there's 16 knobs, 16 buttons for each knob. There's 6 buttons on the side. 2 of them you can't program because it's to switch from different pages. You have 4 different pages for whatever you want to control for each mode. So right now I set it up so that each plugin is one mode. So for each plugin, I would have these 4 pages with 16 knobs, 20 buttons. So in total for each mode, I have 64 knobs and 80 buttons that I can program. So the bottom row controls the navigation. With this knob, I'm going to go up and down the tracks. If I click on it, it's going to solo it. With this one, we're going through the devices. And if I click on the button, it's going to enable, disable, whatever I choose. This one controls the panning. If I click on it, it goes back to the center. And with this, I control the volume. And if I click on it, it disables the track. Now, as you can see, whenever I go up and down, I don't know if it's going to translate, but you can see the colors here are going to change. It's just to let me know which plugins I have on the track. So if I go up and down, you see the colors are changing. And how I laid it out is I have my SSL channel strip on this button. I have here my SSL compressor. Here I have a gold plate reverb. Here I have my EQ8, the Ableton stock plugin. Here I set up another channel strip just to test it out. Here I have a second compressor, the Silica by Kush Audio. Here I set up Valhalla just to test it out as well. It's not all mapped out. So if we go into my second track, basically I put everything in there. So you see there's a lot of green. So if I click on my SSL channel, you see the little blue hands, it's selected on this plugin right here. And now I've changed my mode. So when I click, when I click this button, I change into the SSL channel strip mode. And now I can basically control everything on the channel strip. How I laid it out for the SSL channel strip is my top row is going to be the gain of each frequency band. So low, low, mid, high frequency. Here is going to be my frequency. As you can see, the buttons are changing depending on what I turn. Now, if you see some of the frequencies like the low mid and the high mid, they have a Q button and I didn't have enough knobs. So what I did is when I click on this one and I turn it, it's going to turn the Q. Same thing for the high frequency. Then I set up my low pass and high pass filter here on the sides. Here is my input volume, output volume. So input, output. And some of the buttons I've set up that if I click, it just resets to the values, like for my gains. And if I want to set up the compressor, I can change the ratio, threshold, and my release right here. I can click to get the peak, fast attack. I can disable the compressor. I can disable the EQ. I can bypass the whole channel strip with the buttons on the side. And then if I want to go back to the track navigations, I can simply just click my top left here button. I set it up on all plugins to be like an escape button. Go back to the default navigation mode. And here we're back to the track navigation. If you clicked on this video, you'll probably spend a good number of hours looking at every video on the Softube Console one and everything related to it. I know I have. I spent I think I saw every video on it on YouTube. And I really wanted to buy it, but I couldn't justify spending 1,000 Canadian dollars on it. So I went with this instead. And so it's kind of like my cheap alternative to it. It wasn't really that cheap though. So how I ended up with this was I was looking for alternatives, but all of the other controllers that I saw that were like general controllers and cheaper, they were physical. They had like physical knobs. Like I would have been able to set it up with this, but as you can see, these are physical. So if I were to change plugins, so I would have been able to program it with my MIDI keyboard, but the problem is that since the buttons, the knobs, and the faders are all physical, As soon as I would change tracks or change plugins, it would retain the old value of the previous move that I did. And as soon as I would touch a button, it would like jump into a value and reset everything. And as I spent a good amount of time finding for an alternative to the console one, the algorithmic ads worked, and I got proposed a product that fit my needs, or so they have me believe. So I was scrolling Reddit and it showed me an ad for the Midi Fighter Twister, and the ad mentioned the endless encoders. And when I saw that, I thought that maybe my idea could work. But the way I thought I would have to do it was map everything on MIDI on Ableton and save all of my presets, all of my MIDI configurations separately. But then the next morning, when I was again scrolling Reddit, I found this Reddit post, which was like exactly what I wanted to do. So as soon as I saw that, it was the Black Friday deals, Black Friday weekend. Well, actually not, it was the week before, but the deals were already there. So I bought it. And it mentioned how they use Remotify. So I went into research mode on Remotify, which is now a Control Surface Studio. And I spent a good amount of hours learning it before I even got my controller, which was kind of a waste of time because as soon as I got my controller and I tried to program it with what I had done in advance, it did not work. So yeah, when I found this thread by CodeJazz, I watched all the tutorials on Console Surface Studio, which is used to program the controller. I'm gonna show it in a bit, and I mean, as an alternative, I think it's pretty good because what I spent on this with Control Surface Studio was around 325 USD, 350 maybe USD with taxes, a bit more with taxes, but still way less than 700 USD dollars, which is 1,000 in Canadian dollars. I really have no complaints about the quality of the Midi Fighter Twister. It's really solid. It came with a little cover. It came with a bunch of stickers. It came with this right angle. It came with this right angle cable. What I really love about the Midi Fighter Twister is really like, for the price, I had so much fun just programming my script. When I first got the controller, I spent the first evening just mapping my track navigation with trial and error a lot. I also in the following week I would just play with it, and I was able to program everything that you saw. I did it in the first week that I got it because I was having so much fun, and I would just do that. As soon as I finished work, I would just start programming the controller, and as I was working, I was thinking of ideas of how to do stuff. It's fun that you can map it the way you want it. Like if I want to map it as the plugin shows, I can do that. If I want to map it in a special way that only I know, like for example, things that make sense to me is having my input output here, I'll map it that way. The fact that the encoders are not physical and that they match whatever plugin I select, it's amazing. I basically have like unlimited inputs and outputs because maybe I have like 64 knobs, 80 buttons per mode. But for every plugin that I showed, each plugin is one mode. And you can also do shift modes where you press something and it changes mode and you release and it goes back to the previous mode. That's what I did with my Q functions. Yeah, so I've been trying it out with mixing. Basically, I put a bunch of plugins, but really the main 4 that I use are the SSL channel strip, the SSL comp, the Goldplay preverb, and the EQ8. That's like, I can do like 90% of my mix with just that. So I've been having a lot of fun with it. One of the good things about it is that even if the plugin window is open, since I don't see when I click, I don't see the values that I'm doing. I'm relying a lot more on my ears instead of my eyes, because before maybe I would go, oh, I'm boosting 15 dB in my low mid frequencies. That's not good. But now I no longer do that because like I know that I'm boosting a lot, but I don't really go by the numbers anymore. It's also a bit more fun to do stuff like filtering as the track plays, as I'm recording my moves. Like for example, for this guitar right here, if you look at these two, I mean, it takes like a second to automate, but it's just so much more fun to do it physically. It's not plug and play, so you have to be ready to spend hours and days configuring stuff. So that's not for everyone. I enjoy it, and that's like maybe I'll get frustrated after a day, but as soon as I'm able to get what I did, like I forget all frustration that I had. The learning curve is really, really steep, however, for Control Surface Studio. I mean, I think I was able to get it quite quickly because I did some programming in the past, so the logic behind it makes sense to me. But like if you have no experience in that regard or like in scripting, it can be quite a task. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube about Control Surface Studio, but they don't show everything, of course. I mean, how could you? There's like infinite stuff, and it's like for every controller that you can plug in and configure. So like it's not going to be only on this. It's basically general showing of what is there. Now, yeah, so the learning curve is pretty steep. Also, configuring a new plugin every time can take a bit of time. Of course, I could do it quickly in Ableton if I just learn my MIDI mappings or whatever and save that. But as I said, with the controller, I don't have to deal with presets and stuff. I just have to click buttons and the mode activates and I'm already there. I think like a big plugin will take maybe like 20-30 minutes. Smaller plugins will take like 10 minutes. Once you know how it's done, it's pretty quick, but I mean, you'll always do like a small error and realize that your output gain is not working and just have to go back to it. There's really limited resources. Like you have to really be willing to learn everything yourself. Nobody's gonna hold you through it and show you step by step how to do it. There's a bunch of tutorials done by Control Surface Studio, which are great. But really they show like basic stuff that you wanna like go more advanced into it. You kind of have to figure it out yourself. There's the forums. A lot of people post their questions there or show their scripts there, but really no one holds your hand through the whole process. So you have to really be like a self-learning type of person. Also, MIDI is not always the most precise. Like you only have 127 values. So for example, I know that one issue that I had was if I have like 80 something tracks, the values start jumping by 2 tracks instead of 1. So I had to set up on the side these buttons so it only goes up and down 1 track at a time. Because when you have a lot of tracks, 127 is it's really not that easy to get the small movements necessary. So it will jump around a bunch of tracks. Also, the issue that you can't open plugins with the controller is kind of a big one, but I mean, ultimately it doesn't really matter because if you know what you're doing, you're just gonna hear what you want. You know where everything is mapped. And also it takes like a second to just click the right button and open whatever you want. I think that's something dealing with the Ableton API limitations, and it's something that you can't script. If someone knows how to open plugins with it, I would love to be able to do that. Also, one thing that kind of breaks my current script are chains or like devices when they're grouped together. For the track navigation part, even if a track is grouped, it doesn't really matter. But for example, if I go into my snare group and I scroll my devices, you'll see that it jumps to the audio effect track and then it skips all the way to the end to the EQ8. So I'm not able to control stuff inside chains. I think I have a way of how I want to do that in the Control Surface Studio, but it's gonna be complicated because I would have to set up a mode for if it detects that there's chained grouped plugins, it's gonna do this. If it detects that there's no chained plugins, it's gonna do that. But I think it's gonna be quite a task. And at this point, if I'm grouping effects, it's to do something very specific, so I don't really need it. I can do about 80% of my mix with just this at the moment, which is amazing because I'm not always just clicking stuff one at a time and going through everything. I can just play. And it's much more fun than clicking stuff. I basically just turning knobs. And it makes me think that I can hear my moves better, but I know that's not the case. I just that I'm actually doing something, and you get like a physical feedback of how much you're doing stuff. And yeah, so it's really not plug and play. It also requires additional software if you want to use the advanced features. Like everything that I set up, you cannot do that if you don't have Control Surface Studio. And let me show you actually Control Surface Studio. This is a script that you can find in the tutorials where you press a button and it lists all of the parameters of a plugin that you've selected. So it will list all the parameters of the plugin that you have selected. Like it will tell you parameter 0 is to turn the device on and off. Parameter 1 is to turn up the gain. Parameter 2 is to blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I would only recommend this to someone who is like technologically inclined and loves to create problems for themselves. Like if you can't create a problem for yourself and then create the solution for it, you won't enjoy programming this, because it's basically like you create your own issues. Like, oh, I want to do this, but how am I going to do that? I have to do this. Oh, but this doesn't work, so I also want to control like my gain. Okay, so now if you want to control the gain, how do I do that? So I think I pushed it a bit more advanced than it has to be. For example, like the lighting up the plugins depending on what I have. I could have only just set up like whatever happens, this will be SSL channel. If I click on it, it goes into SSL channel mode. Even if it's not there. At the moment, if there's no SSL channel mode, I can't even activate it. So yeah, you're gonna hit so many obstacles, so many walls to get everything up and running. And you will be alone in it. So if you like being frustrated and suddenly happy when one button works, this might be fun for you. So I'll show you what it takes to like set up everything as I have. Here, as you can see, I have my SSL channel strip, and right below it, it's everything, all of the parameters that you need to configure with their minimum values, maximum values, current values. Current values is great if you want to click on a button and it will reset to the default position. So I have my SSL channel strip. This is a channel strip that I haven't done yet. The Lindell 80 channel for my EQ. I have my compressors here. This is what I have set up. In here in red is stuff that I have not set up because I don't use it. Reverbs. Yes, as you can see for the Valhalla Vintage Verb, I have like a bunch of stuff that I have yet to configure. My mastering plugins. So as you can see, it's a lot of work. Like you have to go like through every parameter that you want to configure. You have to set it up in Control Surface Studio. And something like the channel strip has like 37, 40 parameters for some of them. It takes a while to configure everything. And then if I go in here, so if we open the script, as you can see on the right page, you have virtual bank 1, 2, 3, 4. These are my pages. And all of the knobs, the button name, the type for every button, what it does, how it reacts. I downloaded this template from the forums. There's a bunch of them for a lot of controllers. Otherwise, if you can't find your controller, you have to create the template for your controls, and I imagine that would take a lot of time. And here on the left side, we have all of the actions that I set up. So as you can see, there is a lot. There is a lot. Here I have my modes. So this is what I have for the moment. The default track navigation, my SSL channel strip. SSL channel strip shift is basically for the Q buttons. When I click a button, it goes into the shift mode. Then as long as I hold that button down, I can change stuff in that mode. And as soon as I release, it goes back to the SSL channel strip mode. But like, for example, if I filter it by track navigation, just the basic functions that I showed you, it takes all of this. So you have like track solo, track volume, master volume. These are the different type of actions that you can set. I think my most advanced action that I have is the check for whatever plugin that you have. And if I open that, you see, as soon as I activate the default mode, it will launch this reaction. Or if I change tracks, or if I add a new device to a track, it's gonna do a bunch of stuff. It's gonna do all of this. All of that. That includes lighting up the right buttons. That includes saving a position in the software, saving the position of the plugin so that whenever I click, it goes to the right position and selects the right plugin. But yeah, it's a bunch of stuff, really. It's a lot of work. So let me just show you a couple of plugins. Now, the only thing is that I can't open the plugins with the Fighter Twister. So let's say I open these plugins right here. So first of all, let's activate the track. Let's solo it. Activate solo. And now I'm gonna go into my channel strip. Let's play. So let me disable a couple of plugins first. I'm gonna disable the reverb and the compressor. Go back to my channel strip. Let's say I wanted to do a little filter effect. I could just, while the track is playing, I could just hit record these moves. So it's cool because I can play around with different stuff at the same time. I don't have to like click and point one thing at a time. I maxed out all the gain. So now if I quit that plugin, I go to track number 1. I select the channel strip of track number 1. You'll see the values have adapted to what was on track number 1. Now if I want to go to the second track, and let's hit up the compressor. So the second one here. Now let's start. Oh, I have to enable it first. That would help. Compressor of the second track. So let's play around with the threshold. If I want to do like a fast attack, slow attack, I can change my ratio. I can activate the analog mode. Compressors I've set up basically the same way with my threshold here. This one has the makeup gain here. This is my attack release. And I can activate my fade out as well if I want. that's fading out. I can also bypass it. So now let's say I want to play around with my reverb. So the third one here. I try to follow what's on the screen basically. So I have my drive right here, my blend is over here, my output, so these three, and then this three on the right is gonna be this three. And squish, so my reverb, pre-delay, my width. Then I'll have my reverb time. Here's the mode, steel or gold. And same as the channel strip, I set up my low pass and high pass filters here. So my low pass filter and my high pass filter. And always the button at the bottom left to disable, to bypass. And top left always to exit and go back to track navigation mode. So now as I said before, the colors here are to indicate what's on the track. So if I go to the first one, you're gonna see that I have the channel strip, I have the channel strip, I have the reverb. If I go to the second one, well, I have everything because I was just testing everything out. Then if I go to my third one, I only have the channel strip and Valhalla reverb. So let's open that up. So I don't have everything mapped out yet, so I only have like the mix, decay, pre-delay. I have my filters here. I have the mode and the color. Yeah, that's everything I have for now. If I go to the next track, I have the EQ8. So if I go there, I have my bands already mapped out. I can change the mode for each band with the third row. So same principle as the channel strip. If I click and turn, I change the Q. Let's go back. Yeah, my last one has the Lindell 80 channel, which I've mapped out kind of like the other channel strip. So I have my low frequency, mid frequency, high frequency gains. The frequencies are in the middle here. Here's my compressor dry wet sidechain. I have the threshold, release, recovery, and all that here with the buttons. The buttons matching what's on the screen basically. I have my filters and the input output as the other one. Then if I go to the other compressor here, I set it up kind of the same way where I have my threshold here. This one has nothing. I have my attack, my release. I have my ratio here, and I have my mix from saturation and compression here. I have, if I click this button, it activates the Fury mode. So here I have my diode type. Here I'll have my blend. Here I'll have the sidechain frequencies and boost. That's pretty much it. Input output setup always on these two. Let's go back. Now, of course, I can't open my plugins, but I can still go in there. And if I want to boost up the bass, I can do that. If I want to boost up my high frequencies, I can. I can always reset them. I can play with my filters, input, output, whatever. I just have to know what I'm doing, basically. You just have to remember the layout that you choose, and that's why I set it up that way. It was the most intuitive for me. I also set up a transient shaper by kilohertz on this button here. I didn't show it, but I can do it as well. I started setting up my mastering chain, and for the master chain, I went with page 2. I'll have the same navigation basically as the other. I'll have my volume. Here, this volume doesn't go past 0 though. I set it up so that the max value I can get is 0. And yeah, and I think I just have these two mapped out right now. But I have my EQ, which does EQ, compression, saturation as well. Well, I mean, I won't go into it, but everything is mapped out so that I can play around with it. I have my Kramer tape as well. I have everything mapped out. I have my Golfos, which I'm only using these 4 right here. I'm pre-recording because what comes next is a little bit confusing. Basically, when you want to program a plugin with Control Surface Studio, most plugins, when you open them and you open here the little arrow, you have all of the parameters already set up. So when you get your list of parameters, everything's already listed. But for others, like for example Q3, when you open it, there's nothing because the plugin is kind of dynamic and there's nothing there yet. But once you start adding stuff, you see that it starts to get populated. That's why in Mixbox, I saved a default preset, so that anytime I open Mixbox, it's already going to have the parameters that I require for Control Surface Studio. I have my saturation here for Mixbox, which is pretty cool because I'm able to save a preset with my parameters already programmed here. And I can just go and change whatever I want. Go here, blah, blah, blah. And whenever I open an instance of Mixbox, it will already have these 3 parameters set up. But not the, well, I guess I could save this as an initial. So as soon as I'll open up any instance of Mixbox, I'll have these 3 already saved into Ableton. That's a cool thing about the Control Surface Studio, is that I don't have to save a bunch of presets for every single plugin that I have. I can just save them as different modes in the script that it generates, so that I don't have to save all of my presets and go back to it and then maybe change it one day and then it no longer works. Basically, with the script that it generates, everything will always be mapped up the same. Hopefully I said everything that I wanted to say about it. I mean, I went pretty quickly, I think. I don't know how long this took. But yeah, the Midi Fighter Twister is so fun. It's an amazing product. So I'll see you for my next video. Midi Twister Fighter. My Midi Fighter Twister. Midi Fighter Twister. Midi Fighter Twister. Ad for the Midi Twister Midi Twister Fighter? Or Midi Fighter? Oh no. Am I still recording? Oh. I think I talked for too much because it's no longer recording. That's the problem.